Hi friends, welcome to episode 62, and if you're familiar with your RTs you'll know that the number 62 is an important number for the RT family, as in April 1979 the very last RT operated in service out of Barking Garage, and I suppose you could argue our three, that's 604, 1018 and my one, 3461, were also special for London Country because in 1977, almost at the end of RT operation, they got recertified, which might well have took them past 1979, who knows. Anyway, yep, it's very cold outside, it's -3, and there's been an absolutely beautiful sunrise out there. Anyway, I'm going to have a cup of coffee first, but I've got a few things I need to do today. Today is Sunday. I was up here yesterday prepping panels, which I agree is not the most exciting thing. And we had a couple of visitors turn up. Mark Davis was here, so we shared a coffee and some fish and chips. And Wesley popped up to have a chat as well. So by the time that everyone had gone, it was 6 o'clock, and I thought, should I pack up? And I went, actually, I've got a few things I want to do. So I stayed here till about 7:30 last night, and it's 6:30 in the morning. So anyway, right, so let's push on. Let's see what we get done this weekend. I'll make no promises because it may all go wrong. Who knows?
Yeah, Saturday started horrid, just like this. It was foggy, cold, a really horrible day. But anyway, as the day went on, the fog did lift and gave way to some nice sunny spells. But anyway, Sunday, that was a spectacular start to the day. Sky was clear. -3, it was freezing up there, but it gave way to this most beautiful Essex sunrise. And of course, that's when I recorded the little video. And so apologies for the poor quality of the vision on the intro. Unfortunately, I've set the camera up with the door shut, then did the intro with the doors partly open, and the camera's obviously taken its light thing from the bright sunshine outside. But Sunday was going to prove to be a really nice day weather-wise, if not really cold. I'll tell you what, before we leave this little segue, I can't resist but add a couple of the pictures in from Sunday morning. One of the great things about this, as we push towards the summer, it's now light at 6 o'clock in the morning, almost, and it's just about getting dark at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah, we're almost 12 hours of daylight, which is really nice. So it makes it much easier working up the barn with the added sunlight. So yeah, hurrah, we're on our way to summer. Let's get started. You might recall this from last edition 61. This is one of the panels that got, I don't know whether it was frost damage. At first I thought it was frost damage, but I think it was a case of applying the paint 48 hours after over the previous layer of paint, and I don't think the stuff underneath had actually dried. So this was the result, this horrible scaling. So I thought, right, I'll put these panels, all three of them that were affected, all the metal ones, into the back of my car, take them home, and with the intention, the sole intention of giving them a little rub down, but didn't get round to it. So they got left in the back of the car. Amazingly, when I came to take them out on Saturday, almost all of this had gone. There was a little bit of damage still on the paint, which required rubbing it back to taking it back to metal, but it's really surprising at how much of this has disappeared. So yeah, I did panic, but it still needed to be done. We can't have it like that. So now, hopefully, what with the weather improving, I might well be able, within the next couple of weeks, to start putting the final cream finishes on these large panels and also on these metal panels.
Okay, you might recognise these from last week's video, but the one with that what was originally mysterious little holder around that area has gone really bad, so that had to be taken right back to bare aluminium again. And that's that light panel just below, which had a few little issues. And at the top, that strange little gully thing, that holds the saloon blind that used to sit over the near side window. So that's come up quite well. It did go on the edges there. Try and get my shadow out of the way, but just on the edge there, that's the only bit that's visible, just that bit there. And if we run along here, this edge here is the only bit that's visible. So there is still a little bit of it on there on that paint that you can't quite see, because what they'll do is that'll be covered with a Rexine panel, so you won't actually see that. This is this panel sort of close up really. We get an opportunity to do that, and you can see where I've had to go through all the base coats to get rid of that scaliness, although that side's quite nice, to be honest with you. And then obviously there's this one here, which doesn't look very happy, but once I put a coat of paint over, that should be all right. And I won't paint this. I'm going to do this top coat probably in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. I'm in no rush to do these now, because the big ceiling panels are the most important bits to get done. So, right, well, there we are, the 3 troublesome panels.
And although the wood panels didn't have any paint issues, there was a little defect that we need to attend to.
Right, this is one of those ceiling panels that you saw me spraying the other day. And I noticed when I was spraying it, I had this very strange wood defect in here. As you can see, it's like a little lump that is sticking out of the wood. And you really, I mean, when you pan back, it almost becomes invisible. See that? Can hardly see it. So what I've had to do is I had to run a load of pencil around it just so that I can actually see where it is. Now look. So what I plan to do today, I'm going to give it a bit of a rub down, see how much of it I lose. And then if I can't lose a lot of it, I have to take it down a bit further and then fill it. That's probably going to be the best way of doing it. So that's going to be one of the jobs for today, is to get this little bit rubbed down. These panels have actually come up quite nicely. There you go. So when the camera stops moving around by itself. So yeah, so that's one of the panels. I think this is panel number 3, this one. And that defect is very noticeable when the panel's wet. It's not so noticeable now because the panel's gone slightly flat, which is as intended, because there's a mixture of different paints in there. I've got yellow in there, white undercoat. So yeah, so that's was intended to go like that. But when we start putting the top coat on, that is a gloss, and that will show up any defects in the panel. Or perhaps I could leave them like that. I don't know. Maybe just do the side panels in gloss. But there we go. Right, so that's one of the panels. The other 4 are sitting around propped up against one side of one of the buses at the moment. But I'm not going to, I'll do this little repair on that panel today, and then probably in a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks' time, I'll flatten these off and then start putting the top coat on. But let's try and get the weather to improve a little bit. These have not been as badly affected as the metalwork. I haven't seen any reaction on the paint on these at all. They've gone absolutely brilliantly, but I don't really want to push my luck with these.
Yeah, well, despite my efforts, I really couldn't lose it. I don't know what that is. My brother might know what it is, but it definitely is some sort of defect in the wood. So I'm not going to mess around with it too much. What I had to do was to go really hard on it, as you can see here, and get it flat, and then take it down just a little bit. And I put some filler in there, so it looks a little bit like this when I went home. I'll sand it down next Saturday when I get up the barn. As you can see in the picture here, it's just slightly wet, so I didn't want to touch it this weekend. But I'll give it a good sand down and see if we've lost it. If we haven't, then we're going to have to look at doing something else, or I don't know what we're going to do, but probably a little bit more sort of take it down a little bit further. But yeah, a bit of a shame really, just a defect in the wood. On Saturday afternoon, I had a visitor. It was very nice to see that person and his friend, and we ended up chatting to about sort of 5 o'clock, I suppose. So I went back to the shed and I thought, what should I do? Should I go home? And then I thought, no, I've got a couple of little jobs to do. It'll just take 5 minutes. Well, they actually took about 2 hours. So I left about 7:30 on Saturday, although it was really quite nice. But then when I came back on Sunday, this had happened. Yep, this happened. It's -3 at the barn at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'll tell you one lovely thing. Now the days are almost as long. It starts to get light just after 6 o'clock. This, I think, is about 6:30 in the morning. And it's getting dark just before 6 o'clock. So the days are 12-hour days. So it's really miserable when it's dark. It's horrible. But yeah, having a bit of sun is brilliant. And although, yes, it's -3, I opened the shed doors up as soon as the sun started to rise up, and it brought some heat in from the sun. So that was quite nice. But yeah, it wasn't fun. But I'll tell you what is fun. Discovering the beauty of an RT. These are the two blind handles. One of them is from the little canopy blind that you saw. That was covered in green paint, and I thought, wow, might as well take it off. I can spray around it easier. It's not on the bus, it's easier to spray there. And I have to mask it up. And the other one is the one on the platform. And that was really manky and horrible. So this actually, all it was the wire brush. So I got the old power wire brush on the drill, and away it went. So absolutely beautiful. And you keep finding these things on an RT. The actual quality that went into building these buses is nothing short of astounding. And it sort of makes you want to cry, really, when you think that, you know, these are poor old RTs that were in the scrapyard that they destroyed all those years back. But thankfully, there are still a few surviving. A paintbrush, a pot of paint, and me are never far away. Because it was a bit on the nippy side, I thought, oh, I'll do these. These two wooden strips are the lowest piece of wood that you'll find on an RT, well, apart from the dog rail, which is fairly well exposed, I suppose. Anyway, these sit just underneath the skirt panel, and they hold the bottom of the skirt panels in place. Now, I'm hoping, fingers and toes crossed, that bit of conduit that we had to bend and twist is eventually going to come back all welded up, so I can get it back in the bus and then get the cables back to the back of the bus, the big cables that I need to get done. And as soon as that's arrived and then that's fitted, then the next thing I want to do is to get the skirt panels back on the bus on the offside, because at the moment, as you've probably seen in previous pictures, they're all missing. So yeah, so there's a little job, and I thought I might as well do this as a sort of a little filler. There's one for the near side, one for the off side. Now, the near side one is a long, long way away. In fact, the old one's still underneath all that paper you see on the left there. But yes, there's a long, long way before I do that. But I tend to like to do things in batches. So when I have the brush out, you know, I do this. The other thing I did do with that brush is I painted the inner wing of the RT. I didn't film it because how far do you go with this stuff? But the inner wing was really quite manky, so I gave it a nice good sort of rub down, and yeah, it looks quite tidy now. Something else that's been hanging around for ages is this bonnet. This is the inside of the bonnet, as you might have gathered. I didn't paint strip this, although I kind of regretted not paint stripping it because the paint's a little bit sort of, I know, weird, but you can see where bits of the previous paint have come off, despite putting at least a couple of coats of this green on there. This is about, I think, the third coat of green. So I'm getting a touch fed up with it. But anyway, and of course the last time I did it, I blew it over, and this was the bit that got really hit with all of the crud. The other problem is that those little struts there, they're a lovely little spot for hiding bits of debris and detritus, which just sort of wait to catch you out. The thing nearest my hand there, that's the spring that holds it in place. So when you lift it up, it holds it up. That's covered up at the moment, because once that's finally finished, I'm going to spray that black so it looks quite nice and tidy. But this was it's gone on a bit too far, really, this bit. But the other piece that I bought, as you're probably aware, the other week I bought a new spray gun. So I wanted to try it out on this panel because, you know, make a mess of it and you just rub it down again, because it's not the best bit to do. So right, so there we are. Just give it a wash off, and then there'll be another wash later on. There we go. Right, having used that wet and dry, you saw in the previous one, I then got the DA out, that's a little orbital sander, and I gave it a little bit more of a nib down, so it created a little bit of dust on the panel. which you can see there. There you go, see it blow out. So yeah, and then I'll take that, blow it all the way through, get it all off, and then it then got another wash. And to dry, I popped it outside in the sun. The sun was really nice and warm, so I stuck it outside. It looked like a very large green cone standing up, because you could stand it up on one end. And it sat there quite merrily outside the barn for about 3 hours. And of course, when I brought it in, there was a very small amount of moisture still underneath that those little struts. So I had to blow it off again with the airline. That airline is running probably at about 100 psi at the moment. So it's really quite effective in getting all the crud out. So anyway, let's flick to after I'd sprayed it. Right, so there we are after I popped a quick coat on it. It's not too bad. It's passable. I'm not going to fuss over it much more because it's going to be difficult to get it to look absolutely brand new. But I also, just before I did this, I took an opportunity to sand the opposite side of the panel down as well, and then to wash it off. So before I put any paint on this, I did both sides. So next Saturday I shall probably do the other side of it, which is the side that you see, and I'll try and get that to have a slightly better surface than this. Although it's not bad, that near side, I know it looks a bit horrible, but that's just a reflection of the lighting in the barn. Right, so one of the bonuses now of having all of that paper off the side of the bus is I can now get on with these little things and start putting things back together again. So you remember this, and if you did see in an earlier edition, you know exactly what it is. All post-war RTs have got this little feature. This little aperture was for a little semaphore arm. If you remember Ford Populars and cars of that era in the 1960s, often had a little arm that when the driver sort of did the turning indicator thing, this little arm would shoot out and indicate the direction of travel of the vehicle. There was a problem, of course, is anything protruding from a bus as it comes into a bus stop is one, likely to hit an intending bus passenger or get smacked onto a lamppost or the bus stop flag or whatever. So to my knowledge, no RTs were ever fitted, but they did do some RFs in the Kingston area, and they decided based on that experiment not to continue it. But as I said, all post-war RTs have got this. This unfortunately, there were still wires in here as well. It had a small amount of rot in there which I needed to deal with, so I had to remove the plate that was on it, and regretfully all 4 screws had completely and utterly had it and they wouldn't come out, so I had to drill them out, and that meant that having drilled them out, I've now got to use helicoils to put them back again. Right, so this is the plate temporarily held in situ, just to make sure I get them to line up where I want it to go, and I'm just drilling out the filler that I put in there. It was a chemi filler. In all honesty, chemical metal, I mean, they make a big fuss of it, but I wouldn't trust it, to be honest with you. So, yeah, but it works as a reasonable base for the helicoils I then subsequently put in. Right, so that is the little panel back on. That was a fairly easy job. So with all of that stuff off the side, as I mentioned earlier on, I can now get on with another little job. This is the driver's footwell on the near side. It's a much smaller one. On 3461, the original one had a bit of metal rot on it. It's like cast aluminium or whatever it is, and it had rotted itself out just on the corner. So I managed to acquire another one, this one, gave it a respray and tidied it up a little bit, gave it a respray, painted the back of it black, as you can see, and yeah, you can see a little bit on there. You see that white stuff, looks like toothpaste, that's the mastic. Probably don't need it here because it's actually a very damp area of the bus, but the secondary problem I had with this a long while back was it requires a kind of set screw and a nut, the set screw on this side obviously and the nut on the other, and it's practically impossible unless you've got a special tool to put the set screw and nuts back, because I had to drill them all off. They were completely rotted, but there's no way I could do it. The only 2 that I could get access to are those 2 that are just visible to the left of that panel. So what I've done is I've put the these sort of like captive rivet kind of things in there with a thread in them. So this is an M6 for those of you technically minded. So it's an M6 set screw. So I put all of those are now set screws rather than set screws and nuts or whatever. So anyway, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately actually, this one I fell on my face really, but the two that you see nearest me gave me a bit of a problem later on, because having put the mastic in there, I couldn't see where the little holes were, and one of them was badly out of line. The other thing you might notice I'm doing is I'm not tightening them right up, I'm just leaving the screws slightly out, and the reason for that is I want to pull it all down together so the mastic oozes out all the way around the edge, nice and easily. So yeah, so that's that little job underway. Right, so finally this is the one that gave me all the grief, this one here. So what I did in the end was I just drilled it through, and because it was accessible from one side, I just put a little nut on the end. So yeah, this is me fiddling around trying to get it to work, but with all that mastic I just couldn't see what the hell I was doing. But luckily, as I said before, fell on my feet with this one. Right, so this is what it looked like before I put the little thing in there, and you can see those little captive rivet-like things that I mentioned just now. Also, you might notice that the panel actually doesn't look wonderful in this picture. The large part, all that grotty looking stuff, that's all covered by the sort of like mud spats that go around the outside, and then there's a piece of beading. So it's entirely covered, and at the top there, where you see it all looking a bit scaly and horrible, there's like a protective metal plate that goes over that, with some sort of grippy stuff, so that when you climb up onto the wing, you know, that sort of holds you on it, otherwise you just slip off and hurt yourself. So yeah, so that where I've gone to town with that paint, and I've rubbed it down quite sort of, I think that was 1200 wet and dry. So yeah, that's the bit you see, that what is all looking a bit scabby, that you don't see. Right, and there we go with a coat of paint on it. So the little footwell thing is in there, and all I've got to do now is to put the little side light back. So I'll put the side light back in, and then I'll put one more coat of paint over it, and then I'll put that little grippy thing in that I mentioned before. This little footwell, this is smaller than the one on the off side. The one that the driver uses to climb in and out the cab is actually slightly bigger than this one. But yeah, this is now the other thing about the Routemasters, I think if you have a look at the Routemasters, I think they use theirs as part of the lifting process at Aldenham, that actually put the crane would be in here, whether it's to stabilise it or something like that. But these footwells on Routemasters, which in this case on a Routemaster will be on what will be the passenger saloon panels, so both near side and off side, so they're set back very slightly. But anyway, this one was mainly for the engineer, and you've also got a little handle there which is covered underneath all that paper, so that you can sort of yank yourself up on it. And the Routemasters, much more helpfully, put the handle actually up on the canopy ceiling, so it helps you haul yourself up on there. But and obviously with this, while I've got this these bits of engine bits out of it, I'm going to leave it accessible, and as soon as those bits are back in and I've got the engine up and running, then all the stuff that's in the way will go back on. Right, so I think that looks rather nice now. It's coming along nicely, and as the bits start to go back on it, it starts to take shape and it doesn't look so depressing. So let me finish with a couple of social shots. Here's Mark Davis and I enjoying a cup of coffee, sitting on the platform of his Routemaster. He pulled it out and managed to block the sun getting into my barn. As you can see, my RT in there. Look, you can see 3461 just poking in there. But anyway, yeah, it was really nice to see Mark, as always, especially as he occasionally brings biscuits with him. So there we are, enjoying a cup of coffee on the back of his Routemaster in the rare sun. And then to cap it all off on Sunday, right at the close of play at 5 o'clock, just before it started to get dark, Mark announces he wants to go out for a spin in his Routemaster just to put some miles on the clock or whatever. So he took it for a little drive up the road. And he said, "You want to come with me?" And I was, "No, I've just had enough. I've been here 12-hour days twice, and I know it's going to be too much. I want to go home for a bath." So anyway, guys and girls, that's a wrap on episode 62. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Looking back at it, yeah, it's been a bit of a funny weekend, I suppose, but 24 hours of working in the barn, and this is what we achieve. But you know, it takes its time. If you want to do it properly, you've got to really sort of take your time over it. You can't rush it. So anyway, YouTube, as usual, would recommend some more videos if you're that way inclined.